Through time, he became Duke Ed Stark of Winterfell, who decided to build a powerful and prosperous northern region. Wade Frye. I am willing to be the eternal servant of the North. Tadwin. When you have a son, be like Stark. Lions are difficult to compete with, but as for the Rose family father and son, the Poodle Dog. Tyrion. When the wolves were raging, fortunately I was there. Littlefinger. When it comes to conspiracies and schemes, I am willing to bow down. Dragon Mother. When a giant dragon is reborn, it encounters a wolf. Wallace. In the end, he still got this knife for nothing. Why be a eunuch? Ed. I'm farming at home, do you insist on provoking me? Blame me. Farming competition, keep farming to the end. Keywords of the novel. Quanyou. The king of the northern realm without a pop-up window, Quanyou. The king of the northern realm. Download the complete text, Quanyou. The latest chapter of the king of the northern realm. Chapter 1. Duke of Winterfell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Duke of Winterfell. Accompanied by the cry of a baby, Duke Ed Stark of Winterfell welcomed his fifth child. Ed Stark has black hair, grey pupils, greying beard, and a serious expression like winter. Sir, congratulations, you're a boy. The old wet nurse hugged the baby in swaddling clothes and happily showed it to Ed. Ed held the baby, and the baby cried even louder. Master Lu Wen fiddled with the necklace around his neck and said, Sir, have you come up with a name for this child? Master Lu Wen was thin and had grey eyes and hair. Caitlin on the delivery bed has beautiful reddish-brown hair, blue eyes, and slender fingers. She smiled and said, Ed and I have already discussed it. If it's a boy, we'll name him Rickon. In no time, Robert, Alia, Shansha, and Bran, who were guarding outside the door, rushed in and surrounded their mother Caitlin and newborn brother, drowning the children in joy. Bran had chestnut hair, blue eyes, and excitedly kissed little Rickon. I'm a big brother now, that's great, he said. Alia smiled and said, I have another younger brother. It feels so wonderful to be a sister. Alia has a long face, brown hair, and grey eyes, more like her father Ed. She is a mischievous and energetic girl. Shansha smiled lightly and said, Alia, don't get too excited. When you were born, I looked at you for the first time and was also very excited. Now, isn't it? You are becoming more and more annoying to me. Shansha inherited her mother's blue eyes and bright red hair, and everyone recognized that she will become a great beauty in the future. Rob took Riken and said, fighting with my younger siblings all day is fun. Rob has reddish-brown hair and blue eyes, more like his mother. Ed's adopted son Sean Greyjoy entered the house and stood by the door, with a smile on his face. Sean has a slender physique and brown-black hair. After the Iron Archipelago rebellion was quelled, 10-year-old Sean was adopted by Ed and taken to Winterfell as a hostage to ensure his father Baron Greyjoy's kneeling obedience. Nowadays, Sean is 16 years old. For many years, he has been separated from his parents and hometown, living under someone else's protection. Seeing the addition of a new member to Stark's family, Sean felt very uncomfortable in his heart, but he still managed to hang his usual smile. Ed's illegitimate son Jon Snow stood at the door, secretly looking into the room, but Caitlyn's disgusted gaze made Jon flee. Caitlyn has always had an indescribable dislike for Ed's illegitimate child outside. Master Lu Wen leaned over to Ed and said, Master, you have a precious son. Would you like to invite the nobles from the northern region to celebrate together at home? Ed nodded and agreed, all right, you release the crow and notify them to celebrate in Winter City in a month. By the way, don't forget to send a crow to Black Castle and have Banyang come too. The family was overjoyed, but Ed couldn't be happy. Ed is a traveler who was originally an ordinary office worker on Earth. 3 days ago, he traveled to Winterfell on the continent of Westeros and became the Duke of Winterfell. Ed found that even if he became the Duke of the North, he often had to wear the Duke's mask. After all, the identity of the traveler could not be easily exposed. As a traveler, Ed is not sure if the direction of history will be the same as in Song of Ice and Fire. He will do his best to win the game of power, win the disputes among the kings, weather the storms of ice and rain, participate in the Feast of Crows, and welcome the wild dance of magic dragons. Ed understood that all the beauty before him was temporary, just as the Stark family language said, winter was approaching. In the evening, Ed arrived at the tower of Master Luwin, who was writing a letter. "Sir, as per your instructions, I have written quite a few letters to various parts of the Northern Territory, inviting noble lords from the Northern Territory to celebrate the birth of young Master Rookin at home. Tomorrow morning, I will release the ravens." "Thank you very much." Adela sat down in her chair. "Master Luwin, I have some business plans." "Do you have a map of the northern border?" "Business plan." Luwin was a bit surprised because Duke Ed usually doesn't even bother to manage the accounts of Winterfell. "Sir, you have always been uninterested in business, why did you suddenly have a business plan?" Ed smiled and said, "After Rickon was born, our family had an extra mouth. Winter is approaching, so finding ways to earn more money is always a good thing." Professor Luwin brought the map, unfolded it on the table, and pressed it down with a butter candle. On the map, there are fortresses such as White Harbor, Terror Castle, Deep Forest Castle, Finger of Flint, Wolf Forest U, Wasteland Toon, Last Hearthpeace City, and Caho City. These fortresses include the White Blade River, Mo River, Tyr River, and Ancestor River, as well as villages of high mountain clans and fishing villages along the long coastline. Starting from Jingza in the south and Land Donation in the north, these places are all paying taxes to Winter City. Every month, Winter City receives a large number of golden dragons and silver deer, and the Stark family has never liked luxury. The noisy martial arts competitions in the south, palace music and dance are almost isolated from Winter City, and the kings of the north have accumulated considerable wealth throughout history. However, these are still far from enough. The winters in Westeros often lasted for several years. In winter, the Stark family not only suffered a sharp decline in income, but also had to spend a lot of money to provide relief to the people of the wintering towns and support their vassals. Even in summer, Winter City still faces various enemies. The rock species of Skaggers Island occasionally plunder the east coast, and small groups of pirates appear on the west coast year-round. Most of the pirates on the west coast are iron species from the Iron Archipelago. After Baron Greyjoy surrendered to Robert, Baron sent his only living son, Sean, to Winterfell as an adopted son, ensuring that the iron species of the Iron Archipelago would not plunder Westeros. Baron also executed some raiders, but the Iron Archipelago never lacked lawbreakers who pursued the ancient path. The savage raiders are also a major threat to Winterfell. Nowadays, the Night Watch Legion is declining, and the number of times wild raiders cross the Great Wall is becoming more and more frequent. After entering the northern border, they will kill adult men, seize food, and kidnap young women and children. Under the invasion of wild people, many villages south of the desperate Great Wall were abandoned and almost became uninhabited areas. Wilderners often harassed the territories of the Amber, Kastak, and Takayama clans, leading to a sharp decrease in their income and a corresponding decrease in taxes earned by Winterfell. Ed has been mentally calculating these past few days that in order to strengthen the northern region, economic development is necessary, and the first step is to make the wintering towns prosperous. Ed's gaze lingered on the map of Winterfell, and he pointed to the town of Dodge next to Winterfell. "How many people are there in the winter shelter town now?" Luwin thought for a moment and said, "There are probably 5,000 people." Ed frowned and said, "There are too few people. I went for a stroll yesterday and found that 4/5 of the houses were empty and the fertile land was left uncultivated. Why don't my people like to live in the winter shelter town?" Luwin smiled and said, "Sir, our northern region is vast and sparsely populated. Only when winter arrives, people gather from all directions in winter markets to report and warm up. The hot springs here attract people in winter. Now it's summer, and many people have returned to their hometowns. Some of these people come from the rocky coast, the sea monster Horn, some from mountain clans, and some live in villages outside Baigang. The wintering town is just a temporary shelter for many residents who own their own houses and land in their hometowns. People always cherish their homeland. Staying in the wintering town means paying taxes to the wintering city, and paying taxes to the lords when returning home is no different for them. Don't worry, the master, they will come back in winter. Ed crossed his hands and placed them on his chest. I hope they come back now. I hope every chimney in the winter market town has fireworks. I hope the streets and alleys are filled with running children. I hope to hear the noise of the market. Master Lu Wan, I would like you to add a message to the letter notifying lords from all over the world to celebrate the banquet in Winter City, saying that Winter City welcomes residents from all over to stay in the winter market town. I want to turn Winter City into the next Baigang, a bustling city. End of this chapter. 2, Chapter 2 Winter Avoidance Towns. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Winter Avoidance Towns. The butter candle flickered in the scholar's room, and after listening to Ed's plan, the scholar shook his head and sighed. My lord, wishes are beautiful, but the wintering town can never develop into a city like Baigang. Baigang guards the mouth of the Baijian River, which goes deep into the northern hinterland. Every day, ships from the upper reaches of the Baijian River bring animal skins, wood from the wolf forest, and various foods to Baigang. Southern ships bring high grain, honey, gold from the western region, melons and fruits from the valley, and ships from across the narrow sea bring exotic spices and gemstones to Baigang. Baigang is the mouth of the northern border. In winter, the residents of the wintering town huddle around the fireplace trembling, but Baigang can continue to operate with the advantage of an unfrozen port. Baigang became the youngest city in the Seven Kingdoms because of its geographical location, the wealth of the Mandalay family, and nearly 1,000 years of hard work. These are all things that the wintering town does not have. Ed looked at the map of the north on the table, his gaze fixed on the town of Dodge Winter. I know that cultivating a small town into a city is a long process, but we always need to take the first step. When the winter shelter town can attract enough residents to move in, I will take my people with me to start construction. Master Lu Wan touched his neck chain and said with a bitter smile, Sir, I'm afraid your first plan will go bankrupt. Now that summer has entered its 6th year, the northern region has experienced multiple harvests, and just this month they have just completed one. They have enough food. Why do they have to leave their hometown and avoid the winter market? The cold winter season was their only reason to avoid the winter market town, as it has been for thousands of years and will continue to be the same in the future. At dinner in the evening, Alia and Sansa sat on both sides of Ed, while Sean, Rob, Bran, and John sat opposite. Ed told the children about the plan. Shansha was extremely excited. Dad, will there be a singer coming when the winter market gets lively? Shansha has always loved ballads and singers. Alia pursed her lips and said, I don't care about singers. Dad, do you have a circus performance? Ed smiled and said, believe me, there will be. Rob made a face and said, Dad, when there are more people in the winter shelter town, we will form a capital garrison, just like the golden robe of King Lin. At that time, John and Sean can lead the garrison and maintain peace in the town. Sean stuffed a piece of beef into his mouth and said, do you need a garrison? These country bumpkins can protect themselves. Besides, they are all very poor, and most of their daughters are ugly. Who would go after them? John gave Chien a disdainful glance and said, Winter City should protect every citizen in the northern region. Ed touched John's head and said, after my invitation is sent out, the houses in the winter shelter town are expected to be fully occupied. John, don't worry, we will protect these people. Master Luwin dispatched ravens, and Ed even sent cavalry to nearby estates, inviting people from cities such as Saiwan, Tuhas Toran Square, and Howwood to settle in the winter market town. On the first day, 3 families came, a total of 21 people, and then the number of people became smaller and smaller. On the fourth day, no one came. Walking on the empty streets of the winter shelter town, Ed felt extremely depressed. How could this be? The scholar Lu Wen beside him said, "Sir, I have already said that unless winter is approaching, those people would rather stay at home and guard their granaries to bask in the sun. Perhaps the master can send someone to investigate among the people." "No, I'll go in person." The next day, Ed changed into a dirty leather suit, hid his appearance in his hood, disguised himself as a wandering warrior, and rode away from Winterfell. Ed arrived at a village and vaguely remembered that it was Lord Severn's territory. Ed saw a middle-aged man farming. The farmers started farming as soon as they finished harvesting. Ed flipped over and dismounted. "Friend, can I ask you a way to avoid the winter market?" The middle-aged man had disheveled brown hair and a scruffy beard, and he looked at Ed. "Keep heading north along King's Road." "What do you do?" "I am a wandering samurai and I want to find a job in the winter market town. I heard that the Duke of Winterfell invited his people to settle in the winter market town, and maybe I can spend some money to buy a house to live in and a piece of land to grow." The middle-aged man revealed his rotten teeth and smiled. "Listen to me, don't go. The wintering town is only bustling in winter, and now it's summer. Lord Ed invited residents to settle in the wintering town. Most likely he wants the people to work for him for free. These aristocratic masters drive us to work hard like cattle. I might as well stay at home and farm." Ed frowned and said, "It's inevitable for the Lord to requisition the people. Would it be different for you to stay here?" The middle-aged man wiped off the sweat from his forehead and approached Ed. "It's still comfortable at home. Mr. Tywin here is a good person. He usually secretly hunts wild boars, deer, and other animals in the woods, but he turns a blind eye. If it's in the winter market town, you can try poaching in the wolf forest. It's next to the winter city, and there are many people in the winter market town. If someone reports him, you either lose one hand, or you can only be sent to the Great Wall and wear black clothes. I know a guy from the neighboring village. Last winter, in the winter shelter town, he went hunting in the wolf forest. He was caught by soldiers from the winter city for poaching wild boars. He begged hard, but was still sent to the desperate Great Wall. To go to the winter market town is nothing more than farming. I also farm at home, and I can even sneak around and hunt some game. Here, I pay taxes to Mr. Severn, and when I go to the winter market town, I pay taxes to Duke Ed. What's the difference? There are many outsiders in the winter market town, so I won't go. Ed is sitting in the study, with a scholar named Lewin sitting across from him. It seems that I must come up with sincere policies in order to attract my people to settle in the winter shelter town. All right, Master Lewin, I want you to send me a message. For 100 copper cents, you can buy a house and 1 acre of land in the winter shelter town. The cultivated wasteland will have the right to use it after 5 years of continuous cultivation. Every time there is a good harvest, the winter city will open a wolf forest for the residents of the winter shelter town to hunt for a month. Recently, wild boars have been rampant in the wolf forest, and hunting is open to the public during the harvest season. Ed thinks there is no loss either. 4/5 of the houses in the wintering towns are currently idle, and most of the ownership of these houses belongs to the city of Lindong. In winter, many residents who come to wintering towns will choose to rent houses, which are only 1/10 of the price of regular hotels. They will leave when spring arrives. The maintenance cost of these houses is astonishing, and when it comes to overcrowding in winter, the rent cannot be charged much. Edso sells at a low price to attract residents to settle down. Master Lu once smiled and said, "With such a price and the right to hunt during the harvest season, I believe it will attract some people to settle down." Ed stood up and said, "Master Lewin, tell my people that when the houses are sold out, there will be no vacant houses in the wintering town for those who don't come to live. Tell them that once the houses are divided, the winter shelter town will no longer accept new members. When the cold winter comes, they can only find ways to endure it on their own. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Gathering towards the Winter City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Gathering towards the Winter City. Ed, along with John, Sean, and Rob, stood at the head of Winterfell, watching the crowd surging on King's Road, with carriages and ox carts stretching endlessly to the end of the sky. When the cavalry and ravens of Lindong City spread the news, it caused a sensation among the people in the northern region, and people gathered from all directions towards Lindong City. They set off from Shunlin Fort in the west, from the high mountain clans in the north, and finally from the Fireplace City and Kaho City. They set off from the streams and wasteland in the south, from the countryside outside Baigang, from the old mountains, the Finger of Flint, the Widow's Watch, and the Terror Castle. People drove cattle and sheep, pulled carts full of grain and daily necessities, and carried their families towards the winter shelter town under the Winter City, just like countless cold winters in the past thousands of years. The only difference this time is that it's still summer. Rob frowned and said, "Dad, I don't understand. At first, you invited the people from the north to settle in the winter market town, but no one came. Why are so many people here now?" Before Ed could answer, Sean interjected, "Lord Ed priced every house and 1 acre of land at 100 copper cents. It would be difficult to buy a piglet at this price, and these farmers are looking for a cheaper price. There is still a chance for legal hunting in winter, so they naturally came." Ed smiled and said, "Sean, you're only right about a part of the reason. Do you know the deeper reasons?" Sean shook his head and John said, "Lord Ed, I know." Ed looked at John and said, "People often say that illegitimate children are good at observing things and understanding the truth. John, why do these people gather in Winterfell?" John said coldly, "Because of the fear of winter." "Not bad, that's the root cause. Duke Ed has released a message that once the houses in the winter shelter town are sold out, they will no longer accept other northerners when the cold winter comes, which scares northerners. Summer has been going on for 6 years now, but even the longest summer can burn out. The elderly in the northern region have all witnessed the power of winter. Some cold winters can last for 10 years, with food shortages and the cold causing people in the northern region to fall into a frozen hell. In the cold winter, the wintering market is their only hope." When Ed invited the people to settle in the winter shelter town, they either watched or didn't want to come at all. However, when they heard that the winter shelter town sold out its houses at a low price, and after the houses were sold out, winter no longer accepted the people who were avoiding winter. With fear of the cold winter, crowds began to flow towards the winter shelter town. Outside the city of Lindong, set up a tent, and the manager, Weiyang Puer, is responsible for buying and selling houses here. You can get a house and 1 acre of land for 100 copper cents. People lined up in a long queue. Captain of the Winter City Guard, Jory Casso, led a team of cavalry and gunmen to maintain order in the crowd, while the beast tamer, Fran, led a group of hunting dogs to guard in the distance. The residents who settled in the winter market town, their carriages and carts were filled with goods. Ed saw an old man with a white beard, the car was piled up with wine, a woman's carriage was crowded with goats, and a boy's cart was filled with cages of chickens, ducks, geese, and rabbits. A butcher's carriage was filled with pork, and Alia was chatting with a butcher's younger brother, with Bran following behind her sister. Sansa and Jenny Poole, Little Beth Casso, walked through the crowd with smiles on their faces. When Duke Ed appeared in the crowd, it immediately caused a commotion, and people all bowed to Ed. An old man with a sturdy physique and silver hair walked up to Ed and said, "Lord Ed, my name is Karen. I am a blacksmith who worked at a blacksmith shop in Whiteport for decades and had the privilege of serving Lord Castak in the city of Kaho. However, every winter, I bring my family to live in the city of Dodong. I was born in Dodong, and my 3 sons and 6 grandsons were born here. This is my hometown. I will never forget the Stark family's acceptance of my kindness in the cold winter, but coming to live here in the summer is a new experience for me. Duke Ed smiled and said, Karen, settle here from now on. Let's fight against the cold winter together. If you're willing, you can also come to Winterfell and forge for me. I have a blacksmith named Micken, and I need more blacksmiths. Karen nodded and said, It's my honor to serve Lord Ed. My sons and grandsons are both blacksmiths or blacksmith apprentices. Nowadays, there are more and more residents in Avoidance Winter Town. The original mills, blacksmiths, hotels, etc. in Avoidance Winter Town cannot meet the needs of so many people. Ed is planning to establish a forging factory in Avoidance Winter Town, and he needs blacksmiths like Karen. 10 days later, all the houses in the shelter town were sold out, and nearly 20,000 people flooded into the shelter town. At night, Ed stood in the castle study, looking out through the window. The winter market lights flickered with candles and torches in every house. Vivian Poole placed a thick notebook on the desk. Sir, this is the registration list for every resident. Every house in the winter shelter town has been sold, and with taxes collected, a total of 286,600 copper coins have been earned. The winter shelter town is already full, but there are still many people who have not been allocated houses. Some people are requesting to live in the castle. Captain of the Guards, Jory Casso, said, Sir, the residents of the wintering town are overcrowded and it's difficult to maintain public order. If so many outsiders live in the castle again, my guards won't have enough manpower. I think these people should be allowed to return the way they did. No, it's not possible. Ed refused. They came all the way to the winter shelter with their families. How can they be allowed to go back? The guard is not manned enough, so they recruited directly from the town residents. Ed turned to the manager Vian Poole and said, Vian, you can arrange for these people to live in the castle. The abandoned first castle can be used, and just clean up the mice and spider webs inside. Master Lu Wen was startled and said, Lord Ed, didn't you say that when the people in the winter market fill up, they will no longer accept people? Ed did indeed vent his frustrations, claiming that once the house was sold out and people were fully occupied, he would no longer accept people seeking shelter in the winter. This was just Ed's strategy to coerce the people of the northern region to settle in the winter shelter town, but the honest scholar Lewin believed it to be true. Ed let out a sigh. Indeed, but as someone with a soft heart, I cannot refuse my own people. Vian Poole looked uneasy and said, Lord Ed, there are many free places in Winterfell, but there are still many people rushing towards Winterfell on King's Road. If we try to accommodate every northerner, our castle's supplies will run dry before winter. Ed smiled and said, Don't be too pessimistic. These people all carry food, and besides, it's not winter now, so they won't sit idly by. The land outside the winter city will soon be cultivated, and estates will be built in large areas. With labor, our granary reserves will only become increasingly abundant. Perhaps. However, Vian Poole's expression was clearly disapproving. I can handle it in front of me, but if there are too many people, I can't even arrange a place to live. Ed stared out the window at the lights of the winter shelter town, his eyes shining with the light of victory. Set up the tents in the warehouse, set up tents outside the city, and establish temporary resettlement points. Anyway, we will soon expand the town, and there will be more houses to accommodate the people coming from behind. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Gathering of Marquises. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Gathering of Marquises. The tents in the wintering town surrounded the city of Lindong. More and more people are flocking to the shelter town. After the houses in the shelter town were sold out, Ed ordered the use of tents to accommodate these people. However, this is only a temporary solution, and the shelter town must be expanded. Ed walked among the crowd in the winter shelter town, with shepherds leading cattle and sheep, pig herdsmen driving away pigs, and farmers pulling grain in carriages, all bowing to Ed. The most common sentence Ed heard in the crowd was, Lord Ed, please make sure to take us in. When winter comes, the winter shelter town is the hope for these people to survive the cold winter. Don't worry, Ed clenched his fist in his right hand. I promise with my honor that I will lead you to a better life. The residents who bought houses began to take responsibility for repairing them, while some began to cultivate the land they bought, plant seeds, and plant hope. Almost all the wooden houses in the wintering towns are of the same color, adjacent to the wolf forest. Wood can be sourced locally, and the price of stone is much higher. Duke Ed recruited 1,000 people to enter the wolf forest and cut down wood. At the same time, Ed took out the wood stored in Wintertown and started breaking ground on the first batch of houses. Among the workers who build houses, only a very small number come from the backgrounds of carpenters and stonemasons. Fortunately, building houses does not require too many skilled workers. However, in Ed's plan, the future wintering town was to develop into a city. Ed planned to build stables to domesticate warhorses, build forge factories to build armored weapons, and build barracks to train horses. These important military-industrial sites cannot be wooden houses. The fire prevention effect of wooden houses is too poor, and stone buildings are much safer and more durable than wooden houses. To complete these plans, Winter City needs to recruit more skilled craftsmen. In order to celebrate the birth of Duke Ed of the Northern Territory's young son, Rickon, the birthday banquet was held as scheduled in Winterfell, and lords from all over the Northern Territory arrived one after another. The first person to arrive was Count Mickey Severn of Severn City, which was only half a day's ride away from Winterfell. Lord Severn brought a team of cavalry in a carriage filled with corn, grains, and a chariot of war axes as a gift to the Duke of the North. Count Mickey Severn stared at the crowd in the wintering town in shock and widened his eyes. Lord Ed, have we already entered the cold winter? Even in winter, I have never seen a winter shelter town so lively. Subsequently, Count Gerbert Glover of Deep Forest Castle and his brother Robert Glover arrived with cavalry and a caravan of horses. Deep Forest Castle's steel-boxed flag flew in the wind, and the team of Deep Forest Castle included leaders of the Forest Clan, Tree Clan, and Branch Clan, all of which were vassals of the Glover family. The gifts presented by the Glover family to Winterfell include 2 carriages of salmon and abalone, a carriage of wild boar meat, and a box of animal skins. The majority of the Grover family's fiefdom is forested, bordered by the sea, with relatively little arable land, so their gifts are mostly prey and seafood from the forest. Count Luce Botten, who spoke softly, arrived with the cavalry and convoy of the Terror Castle, and behind him the terrifying Blood Man flag fluttered in the wind. The gifts presented by Count Bolton were fox skin, mole skin, deer skin, and some processed animal skin coats. Lord Bolton, these animal skins are undoubtedly masterpieces of the skinner's knife. Are you personally doing these? Said Sean Greyjoy with a playful smile. Luke Botten stared at Sean with his dirty and icy eyes, sneering without hesitation. Weeman Mandalay from Bai Gang arrived at the city of Lindong with a large team, and 600 armored cavalry made the residents of the winter shelter crowded over to watch. Angry-hearted John Amber arrived with the Amber family's broken chain giant flag and their followers. De Cheongan is nearly 2.1 meters tall, almost as tall as the foolish horse Boyadu in Lindong City. Although his son is called Xiao Cheongan, he is 1 head taller than his father. Almost all of the followers of the Amber family are tall and over 1.9 meters tall, no wonder there are rumors that the Amber family has giant ancestry. The gifts presented by the Amber family to the Winter City include beef, seal skin, and 10 carts of grain. Count Howwood's gift was deer meat and antler, deer skin, and Lord Locke from the Old Town brought seafood from the Bay of Bight. Meggie Mormon from Bear Island is carrying her daughter Daisy Mormon. Meggie is a gray-haired, short woman, wearing armor like her daughter. The gifts brought by Bear Island are fish catch and bear skin from Cold Ice Bay. The gift from Count Rickard Castak of Caho is wild boar meat, honey wine, and grains. The Castak family is a branch of Winterfell. Count Wyman Mandler was as fat as a mountain, with every finger as fat as a sausage and his belly as if it contained the entire White Harbor. He was a chubby and smiling man, nicknamed Geel Lord. Due to his heavy weight, Lord Wyman could only travel in a sedan chair, which also confirmed his other nickname, fat enough to crush the horse lord. Lord Wyman's gifts to Winterfell are dazzling, including melons and fruits from the valley, honey and watermelon from the river bend, golden wine from Chinting Island, fiery wine from Mill, Panto's perfume, lobster, crab, whale oil for the wife and the Duchess' daughter, an exquisite stroller and a pile of wooden toys. The gifts from the tribes of the northern mountainous tribes were also very generous. The leaders of the Worth, Riddle, and Flint presented flocks of goats, goat milk, deer meat, and pheasants, as well as amber products made of animal skin coats. The Earl of Creek, Roderick Leswell, generously offered 50 warhorses, 3 carts of freshwater fish, 5 carts of grain to Winterfell. The brothers and sons of the Earl of Leswell arrived. Arriving with Count Leswell, there was also his daughter, Countess Barbara Dustin, the Lord of the Wasteland. Every harvest banquet in Winterfell, Countess Barbara Dustin would always fall ill and deliberately absent. Winterfell had long been accustomed to it, and this widow who ruled over the wasteland had only a few instances of loyal loyalty in Winterfell. Now that Winter City is here to attend the birthday banquet of the Duke of the Northern Territory's young son, Lady Ballet Dustin actually came. Ed symbolically invited her, but she didn't expect her to come, but she still came. Mrs. Ballet chose a black long dress, which is the color of mourning attire in the Southern Seven Gods faith. Her skin is pale, and her expression is indifferent as if wrapped in a shroud. Mrs. Ballet's gift is only a cart of vegetables, a cart of radishes, and a cart of turnips, many of which are even slightly yellow and withered. It's a bit shabby. Ed couldn't help but pay attention to Dominic Burton, the attendant beside Ballet. He was a young man of medium build and thin stature, with long brown hair and a gentle demeanor. He was the son of Luce Burton and the heir to the Terror Castle. Madame Ballet's gift amazed the nearby lords, and Big John chuckled mischievously, "Ballet, are you too stingy? Duke Ed has given birth to his son, that's all your gift is." Lord Wyman agreed, "Yes, it's harvest time now. Giving vegetables as gifts, Mrs. Ballet, you're going too far." Mrs. Ballet's smile seemed to freeze the people around her. "I'm sorry, my territory has been attacked by the Iron Man, and some granaries have been burned down. I also need to prepare for a sacrifice in the wasteland to pay tribute to our ancestor king. It will cost a lot of money to pay tribute to the ancestors of our ancestors. Lord Wyman, you obviously don't understand, you southerner who believes in the 7 gods." Wyman Mandalay could only remain silent. The Mandalay family was wealthy and powerful, which inevitably aroused the jealousy of other northern nobles. Their family was exiled to the north from the river bend and believed in the 7 gods. This made the Mandalay family politically ostracized and alienated by the northern nobles who believed in the old gods. Lord Severn said, "Madame Ballet, you have frightened our Lord Wyman. Besides, it is unlucky to talk about sacrificing the dead at a birthday party." Ballet disdainfully said, "We, the people of the wasteland, live under the tomb of our ancestors, never daring to forget those who have passed away. Without death, there can be no rebirth. Lord Severn, perhaps you have long forgotten the great ancestors of our ancestors, but I have not forgotten them." Lord Wooer on the side couldn't bear it anymore. He came from the Mountain Clan, which is known for its hospitality and loyalty to Winterfell. Lord Wooer was nicknamed Big Barrel, and his fiery red beard hung on his beer belly. He angrily said, "What's wrong with you, woman? Today we celebrate Lord Ed's son's birthday, but you are here shouting and paying respects to the dead. Good guy, you are the most filial in love, right? The Wooer tribe is the most powerful branch of the Mountain Clan." When Lord Wooer spoke, the leaders of the Riddle, Flint, Nori, and other tribes came up to besiege Lady Ballet. Countess Meggie also spoke out and scolded, but Lady Ballet sneered silently, as if enjoying everyone's siege. Count Leswell quickly stepped forward to rescue Lady Ballet, and Luke Botten whispered to smooth the situation. Caitlin held the baby Rickon, and Duke Ed stood behind him, watching the argument sparked by Ballet from a distance. Caitlin complained, "Ballet is really despicable. This widow shouldn't have come at all." She was actually talking about mourning the dead at Rickon's birthday party. And the clothes she was wearing, all black, the color of her funeral attire. For Northerners, black may be more easily associated with night watchmen, but in the eyes of Southerners, black clothes more often represent strangers, silent sisters and death. Catelyn came from the Tully family in the Hajin region and believed in the 7 gods, so she naturally saw Ballet's black dress as a provocation. Ed murmured, "This is a troublesome widow." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Widows at Birthday Banquets. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Widows at Birthday Banquets. Madame Ballet caused public anger and was surrounded and accused by the tribal leaders of the Mountain Clan, Countess Maggie, Grand John, and others. Her stream land, Count Leswell, Ruth Bolton, and a group of her brothers were busy speaking up for her, which quelled everyone's anger. Ed noticed that Ballet's attendant, Dominic Burton, was softly comforting Lady Ballet. Dominic's mother, Lady Bessani, was the sister of Ballet and died of a fever many years ago. After her husband's death, Lady Barbara Dustin took over the Dustin family and controlled a large number of fiefdoms in the wasteland. The Dustin family was one of the most powerful nobles in the north, and her father was the Earl of Leswell in the Creek, which was rich in horses and had a strong cavalry force. Lady Ballet's brother-in-law is Count Ruth Bolton of the Horror Castle, and the Horror Castle at the foot of the Lone Mountain has always been a powerful force in the north. Thousands of years ago, the Stark family in Winterfell was only the king of Winterfell. They engaged in fierce battles with the founder of the wasteland, and after hundreds of years of war, the king of Winterfell defeated the founder, forcing him to submit to Winterfell. The Dustin family, who now rule the wasteland, claimed to be descendants of the founder king, and their family emblem is also confirmed by the rusted crown on the cross battle axe. After defeating the founder king, the Stark family still failed to crown themselves as the king of the north, because in the long historical period that followed, Winterfell still had to face more challengers, with the most powerful being the Bolton family, who claimed to be the king of the north at that time and had a separatist side. The Red King. At that time, the territory of the Red King started from the Mojiang River in the north, reached Yangtu Mountain in the south, and was bordered by a narrow sea in the east. It infiltrated into the Baijian River basin in the west. The Red King Bolton family and the Winter King Bolton family staged a Song of Ice and Blood that lasted for hundreds of years. During this period, the Stark family was at a disadvantage, and many Red King's cloaks were woven from the skin of the Stark family. The power of the Winter King and the Red King fluctuated, knowing that the invasion of the Andar people had changed the situation of the war. The Andar pirates crossed the narrow sea in groups, raiding the coastal areas of the Red King. Winterfell took advantage of this and continuously encroached on the territory of the Red King on the northern land. In the end, the Red King had to surrender, give up his crown, and become a vassal of the Winter King. At this time, the Stark family was promoted from the King of Winter to the King of North. Ed looked at Lady Ballet in front of him, his eyes filled with the smoke of past history. The enemy ancestor king of the Winter City in those days had a territory roughly equal to the wasteland of Lady Ballet's fiefdom and her mother's stream. The current Bolton family has greatly reduced their fiefdoms compared to the period of the Red King, but still controls the land around the Lonely Mountain and the Tyr River basin. Their strength cannot be underestimated, and they have always been an ambitious family. The power formed by the alliance of the Burton, Leswell, and Dustin families had to alert Ed. At that time, Ed and John Eileen respectively married Catherine Tully in Lessa Tully, which established the alliance of the North, the Riverside, the Valley, and the Stormwind. The Seven Kingdoms suddenly rebelled against four, overthrowing the Tangrian dynasty and helping Robert ascend to the Iron Throne. Ed looked at the Earl of Leswell in front of him. He was a kind-looking old man with a rosy complexion and looked like a rough old soldier, but he was undoubtedly a politically savvy lord. It was he who married his eldest daughter Bessan to Luce Bolton, and his second daughter Ballet to Count William Dustin, creating an alliance of terror fortresses, streams, and wasteland. Now that her eldest daughter Basen has passed away, she has left behind a grandson named Dominic Bolton for the Earl of Leswell, the future heir to the Horror Castle, and the alliance of the three families remains stable. Originally, aristocratic marriages were commonplace, but this was too much. Is this the confidence of Lady Ballet to use green vegetables and turnips as a gift? Powerful vassals always pose a great threat to their vassals. In the Hejian region, there is the Frye family, in the Eileen Valley, there is the Royce family, and in the Huon region, there is the Hightar family from the Old Town, the Redwin family from Qingting Island, and the Florence family from Yangshui City, surrounded by the High Court rows. Feng Jun must be strong to suppress his vassals, which further strengthened Ed's determination to strengthen the Winter City and develop the economy. Banyan Stark arrived almost at the last moment, accompanied by 10 black-clad and armored cavalry, as well as the commander of the Night Watch Legion, Bear Old Geo Mormon. Xiong Lao has a sturdy physique similar to a big bear. Since his son, Sir Yoram Mormont, engaged in slave trafficking and was captured by Ed and chose to flee, Geo Mormont believed that his son had brought shame to the family and had not been to Winterfell for many years. The appearance of Banyang excited Ed's children. Alia, John, Rob, and Shansha surrounded their uncle, Bran hugged Banyang's thigh, and Banyang kissed Rickon. Duke Ed and Catelyn invited the nobles from the north into the castle hall. Ed sat on the throne and accepted the oath of the vassals. The vassals offered their blessings to little Rickon, and the banquet officially began. The table was piled with abundant food, wild boar meat, lemon cake, honey roasted duck, pigeon pie, and the air was filled with fragrance. Cat Aaron placed all the nobles in high positions, placed Lady Ballet in a corner, and instructed the manager, Vivian Poole, to bring more turnips when serving Lady Ballet's table. It's best to make this widow choke to death. Dominic Burton, holding a harp, sang a song called The Lover of the Ancestor King, on the high platform in the hall, dedicated to his aunt Lady Ballet. Lady Ballet couldn't tell what she felt when she heard it, but Sansa, Jenny Poole, and others burst into tears. Even Sister Molden praised the child's singing as heavenly. Next, Dominic Burton sang a song called Rapids and Steeds, dedicated to his grandfather, Count Roderick Leswell, and uncles. The lyrics mentioned the story of the warriors in the creek riding horses to resist the Iron Man. Ed was surprised by the artistic conception and level of the original song, and was curious about why Luke Burton could cultivate a son with musical talent. Finally, Dominic Burton sang a song called Conquering the North, which tells the story of the Stark family, the Winter King, defeating their ancestor, the Red King, and resisting the harsh winter. The lyrics were impassioned. Professor Lu Wen praised, "This child has a great artistic talent," and the lyrics inside clearly confirm history. This child is different from those singers who fabricate and fabricate. Sir Roderick Casso, the head coach of Wintertown, grabbed his snow-white beard and sneered, "Is it useless for boys to sing? Boys should use knives and guns to become warriors." Mrs. Ballet heard this and said, "Old man, don't underestimate my nephew. Dominic not only plays the piano, sings well, and is proficient in history, but also has strong spear swordsmanship. For the past 3 years, he has been serving as a servant for Count Redford in the valley, and many noble clans in the valley believe that this child has the potential to become the champion of the martial arts competition. If you are not satisfied, you can have the child trained under your command compete with my nephew." Roderick Casso smiled and said, "Madam, you have time to spar. Robert, John, and Sean are all the great guys I have trained." Dominic Burton began singing The Bear and the Pretty Girl, and the whole audience reached a climax. Earl Weeman, Earl Severn, Robert Glover, and others began inviting noblewomen, noble girls, and maids to dance. Big John leaned in front of Ballet and said something to her. Ballet Lady splashed the wine in her glass on Big John's face, and Big John laughed and left. Mrs. Barbara Dustin was holding a glass, feeling a bit drunk. She walked up to Catelyn and Ed, dressed in a black long dress and looking pale and beautiful, cold as ice. Ed could see that she was forced to smile. "Lord Ed, I'm really sorry, my gift has become a joke. Big John was just mocking me, saying that my greens and turnips are not worth my drinking. Do you and the Duchess mind?" Catherine suppressed her anger and forced out a smile. "Madame Ballet, I was already very happy that you could come. You have always been a rare guest in Winterfell," she said. Ballet smiled and said, "There's nothing I can do. My wasteland has tens of thousands of people to manage. I'm a busy woman, unlike you, the Duchess. Your life is so comfortable, like a Virgin Mary, constantly giving birth to children for the Duke. Even in the wasteland, I've heard of your children. Who is undoubtedly the best child in Winterfell? I remember, Jon Snow. Jon Snow has always been a taboo for Catelyn." Catelyn couldn't bear it anymore, like a mother wolf about to erupt when Ed stopped her. "Mrs. Ballet, you're drunk. You need to rest, I'll have the manager take you to the guest room." Ballet chuckled and said, "Duke Ed, I'm not drunk. Have you seen my nephew? Dominic is my pride. Your old coach said he wants to arrange for your son Jon Snow to compete with Dominic, and I'm looking forward to it." Lady Ballet bowed to Catelyn and left, and Catelyn angrily said, "This widow is clearly pretending to be drunk and deliberately picking faults and insulting me." Adele said softly, "Catherine, this is a poor woman. You have given birth to 5 children, and where is Ballet? Her husband has been widowed since his death, and she is jealous of you. You can forgive her for the madness caused by jealousy." Catelyn's mood improved a lot after hearing this. "I know Ballet is a sad widow, but with her advances, can we only compromise?" Ed looked at Ballet in the crowd and said, "Who says we can only compromise? I will make Lady Ballet understand that recklessness comes at a cost." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Threats from Iron Man and Wild Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Threats from Iron Man and Wild Man. The birthday banquet continued, with Dominic Burton singing a song and people singing and laughing, toasting and toasting. Banyan Stark arrived in front of Ed, with a slender figure and long face, black hair, grey eyes, and now serving as the chief cavalry in the Night Watch Legion. "Ed, it's summer now, and the wintering town is packed with tens of thousands of people. What's going on?" "When Commander Mormon and I headed south, we encountered people moving towards the wintering town on King's Road. Rumors were flying. Some said the Duke was to gather the people to fight against the Iron People, some said it was to sweep the wild north of the Great Wall, and some said the long summer was coming to an end." Ed smiled and said, "I just want to make the Northern Territory rich and powerful. When winter comes, the people of the Northern Territory can live a better life. That's all. How is the situation with the Great Wall in dire straits?" Ban Yang sighed and said, "It's not the same. Various thieves, poachers, and lecherous scumbags have been sent to the Great Wall, and there are fewer and fewer righteous people willing to join the Night Watch Legion. However, the power of Mans, the king of the frontier, is becoming stronger and stronger. Maybe this guy will really attack the Great Wall." Xiong Lao Mormon leaned over and said, "Lord Ed, the Great Wall needs manpower. I've talked to the captain of the guards, Jory Casso, and he said that there have been too many people in the winter shelter town recently, and the security is very poor. His guards have caught some thieves and perverts, and they are imprisoned in a cage. There are less than 20 people in total. Give these scumbags to me." With so many people rushing into the winter market town, it is inevitable that public security will decline. There are always pickpockets, robbers, and others infiltrating the crowd. In the past few days, Joey Casso has expanded the number of guards to 200, with 200 guards wearing daggers, short sticks, and long swords patrolling around the cities of Dodge and Winter City, capturing a group of prisoners. The situation has gradually stabilized. The Night Watch has always been a friend of the Winter City. The Night Watch guards the desperate Great Wall and blocks the army of savages outside the Great Wall. However, as the number of Night Watchmen sharply decreased, they were also tired of dealing with the constant stream of wild raiders. Often, wild people crossed the Great Wall, or took ships to illegally cross Seal Bay, entering the territories of the Amber, Wool, and Castak families, burning, killing, and looting. Take these people away. Ed couldn't refuse the request of the Night Watch Commander-in-Chief, but these people are all scumbags. They won't find a chance to escape, will they? These days, the number of Night Watch deserts is also increasing. Xiong said, I will take care of them. Lord Ed, there's nothing I can do. Most of the people who have been sent to the Great Wall these days are lawless people, but even with such scumbags, I still don't have enough manpower. I once dreamed of cultivating a farm in the newly added land to restore its vitality, but it seems like there isn't much chance. Big Wine Barrel, Lord Wall approached. Mormon, the savages often cross the newly added land and plunder our mountain clan's territory. They are the strong shield guarding the kingdom, hee. When a large group of savage raiders appeared, it was not the Amber family in our mountain tribe who wiped out these miscellaneous pieces. The newly added land is a piece of land south of the Great Wall, which was persuaded by King Jerry's I and Queen Alexandria to donate to the Night Watch Corps. The estate taxes here did indeed help the Night Watch Corps, but now, due to frequent harassment from the wild, the tenant farmers here have migrated south, almost becoming uninhabited and completely abandoned. Ed said, Lord Mormon, perhaps Winterfell will take over the newly added land, and I will send people to farm it to help the Night Watch Legion. Xiong Lao frowned and said, Lord Ed, the newly added land was gifted to the Night Watch Legion by Winter City back then. It was witnessed by the king and queen of the Tangrian family at that time, as well as the gods in heaven. Ed smiled and said, Don't be nervous, I don't want to reclaim new land. There is plenty of land waiting to be developed in my northern region. What I mean is, we will jointly develop it. I plan to send troops to Quanyou as the center and establish a military camp. The people there usually farm and practice during their leisure time. If they find any wild raiders, they will light the beacon towers and hunt them with the night watchmen. I will share a portion of the profits from the military camp with the night watchmen. The doubt in Xiong Lao's eyes disappeared. That's good. Xiong Lao left, and the mountain tribal leaders of Nori, Flint, Riddle, and Wooer immediately surrounded him. Lord Riddle, dressed in animal skin, was thick and short. He said, Lord Ed, what's going on in the wintering towns? Like the people of Wasteland, Caho, and White Harbor, their lords are wealthy, and there is no wintering town in winter. They also have hope to survive, but our mountain clans are different. When it comes to winter, the mountains are covered in heavy snow, and our days in the mountains are tormented. There is no winter shelter town, so we can only close our eyes and wait for death. Many elderly people in my tribe are worried that the winter shelter town will not have a place, so they have to leave their hometown early and come to the shelter town. I see that the shelter town is already overcrowded. Do we really not accept our mountain clans in winter? Ed held Riddle's hand and said, Lord Riddle, remember that the halls of Winterfell are always open for the mountain clan. The leaders of the mountain tribes cheered loudly. Lord Ward said, Lord Ed, this time hundreds of people from my tribe have settled in the wintering town. They have settled down, and I feel at ease. However, on the other hand, with the decrease in numbers, we have become even more passive in the face of invasions from Iron Man pirates and Wild Man raiders. The Wooer tribe lives in the mountains near the Ice Bay. When fishing, this tribe needs to be wary of the Iron Man pirates, and when grazing, it needs to be wary of the Wild Man, harboring a deep hostility towards the Iron Man and the Wild Man. Ed said, I just discussed with Commander Mormon that we will set up military camps in the newly added areas to resist the barbarians. As for the threat from the West Coast Iron Man, I also have a plan. After the banquet, the servants withdrew from the banquet and replaced the tables and chairs. Ed summoned the vassals for a meeting. Before the meeting, Ed found Sean, Robert, and John standing in the corner of the hall chatting with Dominic Burton. Sean, Joey has been complaining about the shortage of patrols in the winter town. You go help. Since this meeting inevitably involves the topic of Iron Man, Ed doesn't want Sean to stay here to avoid hurting his self-esteem. Sean bowed and left, with an obviously dissatisfied expression on his face. Ed sat on the Ice Wolf throne, looking around at the vassals. I plan to set up a series of arrow towers and send troops to guard the western coastal areas of Bear Island, Deep Forest Castle, Creek Land, Flint's Finger, Sea Monster Cape, and Wasteland Ton. This news immediately caused a stir among the lords. The Earl of Leswell in the Creek caressed his snow-white beard, while Gabbert Glover and his brother Robert Glover from Deep Forest exchanged glances. Countess Meggie Mormont from Bear Island cursed out loud, and Lady Ballet turned her head to whisper to Luce Botton on the side. Robert Glover said, "Lord Ed, the Iron Man is from the sea. To resist the Iron Man, we should build a ship. What is the use of an arrow tower?" Ed said, "The Iron Man is a maritime nation, and we only have fishing boats on the west coast, so we cannot compete with the Iron Man's long boats for the time being. We are stationed at the Arrow Tower, and the Iron Man pirates will have to pay a price if they come." Meggie Mormon said in a rough voice, "Lord Ed, both the Arrow Tower and the soldiers have to spend money. Who will pay for it? My Bear Island is very poor." Ed said, "Half of the lords in the location of the Arrow Tower will be allocated, and the remaining portion will be shared among the other lords." At this moment, Ed realized that Sean had actually returned, standing next to Robert, Dominic Burton, and Jon Snow. Luke Botton whispered, "It's no use, Lord Ed. Why don't we send troops directly to the Iron Archipelago and question Baron Grecoy? He's not the leader of the Iron Archipelago raiders, is he? He's wiped out the bandits' den, and the world is at peace." Ed frowned and said, "Luce, I am the guardian of the Northern Territory, maintaining the peace of the kingdom in the name of Robert. If our army kills the Iron Islands, we will become the culprits who destroy the peace of the kingdom." Moreover, Ed knew that the Iron Man was difficult to deal with in the sea. In the rebellion of Baron Greyjoy, Robert gathered a large army in the Hajian, Western, Storm, and Northern regions, along with the royal fleet, to destroy the Iron Fleet, forcing Baron to offer his son as a hostage and submit to him. If the tattered fleet of the Northern Army kills the Iron Islands, it is a question whether they can successfully land in front of the long-ship fleet of the Iron Islands, let alone conquer them. Mrs. Ballet's face bloomed with a wolf-like smile. "Lord Ed, why are the Iron Man pirates so rampant?" "It's because you're kind and soft-hearted. Your adopted son, Sean Greyjoy, is Baron's only living son. When the Iron Man plundered the North, you should have killed Sean long ago. He knew you wouldn't harm the hostages, so he was confident." Walter agreed, "Yes, what's the use of a hostage who can't be harmed?" Sir Herman Tauha clenched his palm and punched, "It's time to kill." Count Rickard shrugged and said, "We should have taken action long ago." Ed didn't expect the meeting to develop to this extent. Sean had an angry expression on his face and was about to erupt when he was stopped by Robert and Dominic Burton. Luke Botton's soft words interrupted everyone's discussion. "Actually, I still quite like Sean. His father must receive a warning, but he doesn't necessarily have to kill this child. I suggest cutting off a part of Sean's skin and giving it to Baron Greyjoy. If he is smart, he will restrain his subordinates." Sean turned his head and left, and Rob chased after him. Ed sighed and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to see you seriously discussing how to murder a young man. The Iron Man is difficult to restrain, and every captain is the king on his own ship. Baron Greyjoy can control the Iron Islands, but he can't control the Iron Man pirates scattered on the Bird's Poop Island. Killing Sean is of no use. That's all for now. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Salt Village and Honey Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Salt Village and Honey Plan. The people on the west coast of the northern border, whether they are the Leswell family in Creek Land, the Mormon family on Bear Island, the Glover family in Deep Forest Castle, the Flint family referred to by Flint, or the Wool family on the high mountains near Ice Bay, have all been ravaged by Iron Man pirates. These lords hate Iron Man pirates to the bone. But when asked to spend money building arrow towers to resist the Iron Man, these lords also showed a very passive attitude. In order to protect the safety of the west coast, the arrow tower must be built, Ed urged the vassals. Count Leswell said, Lord Ed, the coastline is long, building arrow towers and deploying troops is a huge expense, and future maintenance costs will also be a significant expense. Countess Meggie Mormont agreed, the Great Wall of Desolation is a great example, the largest defensive fortification in the world, isn't it? Brandon, the builder, built so many castles back then, but now most of them are abandoned, with only the East Sea view. The Shadow Tower and the Black Castle are still barely supported. Other nobles nodded in agreement. Ed said, I have already thought about the maintenance costs of the Arrow Tower and the cost of soldiers. Each Arrow Tower is guarded by 20 soldiers who can work every day in addition to training. Next to each Arrow Tower, salt fields are developed and sea salt is extracted. Just like military camps, I call them salt camps. Mrs. Ballet widened her eyes, Albert Glover fell into contemplation, Herman Tauha looked confused. It was obvious that these people didn't quite understand what Ed was saying. Ed had to patiently explain. Ladies and gentlemen, during the summer in the northern region, salt is basically self-sufficient. However, in winter, due to insufficient sunlight, our sea salt collection production will sharply decrease. Many places salt farms will shut down during the long winter season. At this time, we can only rely on purchasing salt from the southern region across the narrow sea. Every winter, we have to spend a lot of money on purchasing salt. Our northern region has a long coastline on both sides. Why not take advantage of the summer to vigorously cultivate salt farms by the seaside? In winter, we can store a large amount of salt and even export it to other places to make money in the future. The ancestors were not a seafaring nation. On the land in the north, the people in the north had faced the invasions of Andar pirates, Iron pirates, Savage pirates, Sisters male pirates, Stone Steps pirates and other pirates of all kinds. The salt fields in coastal areas were often damaged by pirates, and the number of salt fields in the north decreased sharply over time. In winter, salt is so expensive that ordinary people dare not expect it. Ed is determined to change this. The vassals of Winterfell gradually understood, and Lady Ballet said, Lord Ed means to use the profits from the salt fields to pay for the maintenance of the Arrow Tower soldiers. This idea seems good. But the problem is, what if the sea salt is produced and cannot be sold out? Ed said, Winter City will purchase at the market price. You just need to be responsible for the safety of the Arrow Tower and the salt field. Salt is not worth money to the Iron Man, so you don't have to worry about Iron Man attacking the salt field. Originally, the feudal lords on the west coast were complaining about the cost of the Arrow Tower and soldiers. When they thought about the development of a salt farm that could still make money, they immediately came to their senses and agreed to Ed's plan, each with a smile on their face. Seeing that the vassals on the west coast had arrow towers and could still make money from salt farms, the vassals on the east coast also had thoughts. Luke Botton's dirty and icy eyes sparkled with light. Lord Ed, in fact, some pirates come to my territory from time to time. I can also build arrow towers and open salt farms on my end, but I don't know if Wintertown will be willing to purchase them at market price. Rickard Castak stroked his beard and said, Lord Ed, the Castak family is a branch of the Stark family. Since you proposed the plan for the salt village, how can I fall behind? Our territory has plenty of sunshine, and the quality of sea salt must be good. Don't forget my family emblem, which is the white sun shining. Everyone knows that many savage raiders rowed boats, bypassed the East China Sea, crossed the Ice Bay, and landed on my territory, which is a great threat to the northern border. I believe that on the coast of my peninsula, developing salt fields, building arrow towers, sending soldiers, those savages can no longer harm the kingdom. The Earl of Locke in the Old Town and Lady Lyshawn Flint, the widow, also requested to build the Arrow Tower salt field in their territory. In the end, even Weeman Mandler joined in. Bygang has plenty of beaches, and we used to have some salt farms. If Lord Ed needed them, I could build Arrow Towers and salt farms and join the Salt Village plan. Arrow Towers can enhance the city's defense and scare off smugglers. In fact, Count Wyman does not care about the profits of the Arrow Tower salt farm, as Bygang receives considerable tariff revenue every day. What Count Wyman values is the principle of purchasing Winterfell at market price. As long as he joins this plan, Bygang salt will not be difficult to sell. Ed nodded and agreed, Bygang can join, but you need to understand that Lindong City is purchasing the salt produced by the Northern Arrow Tower salt factory at market price. Don't let the free trade city state or southern salt mix in. Count Weeman rubbed his chubby fingers happily and said, Lord Ed, don't worry. How dare I fool you? The nobles by the seaside have all joined the Salt Village plan, and some lords without seaside fiefs can only envy them on the side. Many of these people are leaders of the Wolf Forest and Mountain tribes, as well as nobles like the Earl of Severn and the Earl of Howd. Ed saw the thoughts of these people and said, those nobles who didn't join the Salt Village plan, don't worry, I have prepared another business for you. The Lord immediately listened attentively, and Ed said, our northern region has vast forests, mountains, and farmland that are suitable for beekeeping. I want to promote beekeeping technology. You can establish beekeeping factories in various territories, design beehives according to the design diagram I gave you, feed bees according to the recipe I gave, and I will assign experienced beekeepers for you. Believe me, as long as you follow what I say, bees will make money for you. The honey you brew doesn't have to worry about sales, just like salt, Lindong City will purchase it at market prices. The hearts of the lords were as sweet as honey. The Northern Territory has always been a harsh place, where these lords have to worry about their territories and people every day, constantly trembling under the shadow of winter. Now, Duke Ed's plan, like a lighthouse, illuminates their hope. Big John Amber said, Lord Ed, I'm a rough person and I don't understand these things either. But I'm worried that you've been buying these honey, salt, and the like at market prices. Don't waste them if you can't finish them. Don't lose money. Ed smiled and said, don't worry, Big John. I won't lose money. I have my own uses for the honey and salt I buy. I also need your help. If there are skilled craftsmen in your territory, whether they are blacksmiths, tailors, stonemasons, or veterinarians, as long as they have solid skills, they can be sent to Winterfell. Ed waved his hand to signal the end of the meeting, and Count Horwood immediately led the lords away one after another. Lord Wyman, you stay. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Sean. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Sean Wyman Mandler was originally trying to move his massive body, trying to get up and leave. When he heard Ed call him, he immediately sat back. Lord Ed, do you have any orders? At this point, the nobles had already left, leaving only Ed and Count Weeman in the hall. Lord Weeman, you are the Count of White Harbor. White Harbor deals with ships and sailors from all over the world every day. Among my vassals, it is evident that you know ships the best. Since Brandon, the Stark family has been uninterested in navigation. Now Ed suddenly asks, Lord Ed, do you want to build a ship? Said Count Weeman, somewhat surprised. No, I want to build a fleet. Count Weeman touched his plump chin and said, build a fleet. Lord Ed, that would cost a lot of money. Ed crossed his hands and said, where is the shipyard with the best quality? Count Weeman thought for a moment and said, bravos, the shipyards there can build one ship a day. Of course, the shipyards on Qingting Island and Junlin are also good. Don't forget the Iron Archipelago, where the long ships of the Iron Man are not inferior to any warship. No matter where the shipyard is, the price of ships is expensive. Ed said, so I plan to build my own ship, build a fleet, and create a navy in the northern region. We have plenty of wood in the Wolf Forest, so we need ship designers. Most of the people in the northern region are descendants of their ancestors, who did not engage in navigation. When the ancestors arrived on the continent of Westeros, they still relied on the arm of Dorne to walk over. On land, our ancestors were brave and skilled in warfare, but they were completely defeated by the sea. The northern region has a long coastline, and Ed needs to build a strong navy to guard his homeland and protect his people. If there is a fleet in the northern border of White Harbor, once Robert and John Eileen in the south encounter trouble, Ed can send 2 armies, heading south along King's Road. The naval fleet can carry soldiers out of Bitter Bay in White Harbor, pass through the narrow sea, and take the throne directly. Once it enters a state of war, Winterfell will have more initiative. This plan excited Count Weeman immensely. Lord Ed, the emblem of our Mandalay family, is a male mermaid holding a trident. Who knows the ocean better than a mermaid? You leave shipbuilding to me. Every day, ships come and go across the narrow sea in Bygang, and I can help you find excellent shipbuilders. After Count Weeman left, Robert hurriedly ran in. Dad, Sean is angry. You go take a look. He's in the Divinewood Forest. Today is a cruel day for Sean. At the meeting just now, Sean witnessed the nobles in various northern regions discussing how to deal with the Iron Man. These nobles even believed that Sean should be killed as a warning to Baron Greyjoy. Shinmu Lin, Sean, and Dominic Bolton stood together, and the heir of the Terror Castle seemed to have become friends with the heir of the Iron Archipelago in a short period of time. Dominic comforted Sean. Dominic bowed to Ed and left, leaving only Ed and Sean in the Divinewood Forest. Ed looked at the pale fish beam, whose crimson eyes seemed to be weeping blood, staring at Ed and Sean. You come to the Divinewood Forest, seeking the comfort of the old gods. Sheehan snorted lightly and said, Lord Ed, this strange tree is not my god, it has never been. Just like those northern nobles at your meeting said, I am a damn iron seed, I am not a Yankee. But here I can't hear the sound of the sea, I can't smell the taste of sea salt, and the drowning god has no power here. Where can I go? The 7 gods are strangers to me, and Sister Molden and Sister Chael in the temple only talk. Ed only then noticed bloodstains on the Divinewood Forest, and Sean's fingers were covered in blood. Are you hitting the fish beam with your fist? You're injured, go find Master Lu Wen. Ed looked at Sean's fingers and Sean withdrew his hand. Lord Ed, I'm sorry to wave my fist at the old god. Will those Yankee nobles execute me for this? Ed sighed and said, Sean, I'm sorry about the meeting. Before the meeting started, I specifically asked you to go find Joey. I sent you to join the guard to avoid the winter market and maintain order, just because I was worried that you might hear those unpleasant words. I didn't expect you to come back. Sheehan sneered, I'm glad I'm back. I've seen how hypocritical and bloody those aristocratic masters are. Ed said, Sean, you can't blame these lords. Their people have suffered from the slaughter of the Iron People, and they have mistakenly turned their anger towards them onto you. Words are like the wind, and lords wear public masks during meetings, especially when such lords gather. These aristocratic lords collude and fight against each other, some even have world grudges, some despise each other, and some use each other, but they sit there and always have to express their opinions. They clamor for me to kill you, and many people just agree, like parrots learning to talk, they can't really do it. Ed patted Sean's shoulder and said, of course, I'm not trying to justify them. They openly discussed the murder of my adopted son at my lord's meeting, asking him to take responsibility for the crimes he shouldn't have been involved in. I don't accept it. I scolded these guys hard. Sheehan hesitated and said, but today a cavalry from a deserted village mocked me, saying that if my dad dares to provoke the North or the Iron Throne, you will use the Stark family's Valyrian sword, Cold Ice, to cut off my head. The adopted son is used to ensure family loyalty, and once my dad's loyalty is questioned, I will die. Ed said calmly, when I took you as an adopted son back then, I did consider ensuring that your father Baron would no longer rebel. This is a fact. I was also worried at one point that if your father disregarded your life and rebelled again, I would not have the courage to harm your innocent child. When you came to Winterfell, you were indeed a hostage, but now, it's completely different. When you came to my house, you were 10 years old. Every day, you ate with my wife, my children, and my illegitimate son, shared the fireplace and hall. You received training from Sir Roderick Quanyou, and studied with Lewin with my children. You knew everyone in the Winterfell city, whether it was Adu, the beast tamer Fran, the old wet nurse, the chef Gage, the blacksmith Micken, or the horse stables Huluin. Sean, it's a fact that you grew up in Winterfell. You're a sea monster and also a wolf cub. I don't know what you think, but in my heart, I've always treated you like an eldest son. You're Robert's older brother, teaching him a lot. In the future, you can also help me protect Bren and Rickon. Sheehan was greatly moved and said, Lord Ed, I didn't expect to be sorry, I thought. Ed said, back then, I used to be an adopted son with Robert by John Eileen's side, and some people in the valley called me a hostage. When the Mad King Iris asked John Eileen to hand over me and Robert, how did John Eileen do it? He chose to raise the banner of rebellion and bet his own and his family's fate on 2 adopted sons who were not related by blood. Sheehan murmured, yes, that war even buried the dynasty of the dragon. Ed leaned in front of Sean and said, to be honest, I discussed shipbuilding with Count Weeman and building the Northern Fleet. Sean, you are the Iron Seed, training the Navy and commanding the fleet. Who is more suitable than you? You play an irreplaceable role in my plan. Sean smiled and said, Lord Ed, in the future, I will inherit the Iron Archipelago, and you will be responsible for sending the Greyjoy family in the Iron Man fleet. He immediately fell into confusion again, I will inherit, right? After all, I am my father's only living son. Ed said, what rumors did you hear? Sean said, in the town of Dodge, there's a fisherman from the sea monster Cape who heard that my father plans to let my sister Asha inherit the Iron Archipelago. However, the captains of the archipelago seem more willing to support my uncle, Crow's Eye, Euron and Victor Leon Greyjoy. Ed smiled and said, Sean, inheriting the Iron Islands is your right. If your family and Iron people do not respect your rights, I will help you win the Sea Stone Throne. Use the power of the entire Northern Realm. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Dominic Bolton. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Dominic Burton. The next day, Ed was pleasantly surprised to find that Sean's face had returned to a playful smile. When he met Luke Burton in the castle hall, he knew he was joking with Luke Burton's soft whispers. Robb, Jon Snow, and a group of similarly aged attendants were playing around in the hall, while Alia was chatting with a group of horsemen from the creek. Sansa, Little Beth Casso, and Jenny Poole were surrounded by Dominic Burton, while the heir to the Terror Castle held a harp in his hand. Dominic Burton's performance intoxicated Sansa and a group of young girls from Winterfell. Sansa crossed her hands and placed them on her lips, looking at Dominic Burton with admiration on her face. Are these lyrics all written by you? Your voice, your talent, the notes that jump out of your strings are simply heavenly sounds. I especially love the stories in your songs, the great knights, the beautiful princesses, everything is so perfect. Dominic nodded humbly, revealing a sunny smile. Thank you, Miss Sansa, for your praise. I'm glad my singing can move you. Ed gazed at Dominic's handsome face and clear ice lake-like eyes, with a gentle demeanor that made it hard to imagine that he was actually the son of Luke Bolton. Shanshaw said, Winterfell rarely sees singers, Dominic. You are the best singer I have ever seen. Dominic said indifferently, Miss Sansa has been praised too much. I am not a professional singer, music is my hobby. I am happy to share my songs at various banquets, but I will never sing for money. A wave of worshipful cheers drowned out Dominic. Shanshaw said, I hope you can always live in Wintertown and perform for us every day. Dominic shrugged and said, I really like Wintertown, but tomorrow, I'm going to follow my aunt, Lady Ballet, back to the Wasteland Hall. Sansa, Little Beth Casso and Jenny Poole were both disappointed. Shansha said, "No way, I'll let Dad keep you. At least stay a few more days. I haven't heard enough of the songs." Ed walked over and said, "Sansa, Dominic is Lady Ballet's attendant and the heir to the Terror Castle, not the singer you casually send." Shansha pouted and said, "Dad, even you said the same." Shansha shook her chestnut long hair and turned to leave. Jenny Poole and Beth Casso bowed to Ed and followed her away. Dominic stood up and greeted Ed. "Lord Ed, I didn't expect Miss Sansa to love music so much." Ed said, "Shansha is always filled with unrealistic dreams of knights and princes. A girl of her age doesn't even know that songs and reality are two different things. I heard you sing the song of the Founder King at a banquet yesterday, which happened thousands of years ago. Do you believe that's true?" Dominic played the strings and played a sad note. "I believe that's true. We have to believe something, otherwise we'll lose ourselves. I love history, I love books, but unfortunately there are too few good book copies. Lord Ed, I heard from Master Chell that the library tower in Winterfell has many precious books, some of which don't even have a study city." Ed said, "Yes, you should know that our Stark family has been in Winterfell since the time of the Winter King. Winterfell has the largest collection of books about the North in the world." Dominic's eyes lit up and he said, "So there are also books on the history of the Burton family." "Lord Ed, I have always been interested in the history of the Leswell family in my grandfather's creek, the Dustin family in my aunt's wasteland, and the Burton family. Can I borrow these books?" Ed said, "These books are very precious, many of which are fragile parchment or even ancient scrolls. You can go to the library to look them up, but you can't take them away. These books are priceless treasures, and Ed instructed Master Chale to manage them properly, even adding guards outside the library tower." Dominic thought for a moment and said, "In order to read, it seems that I need to stay more in Winterfell. Will Lord Ed welcome me?" Ed quite likes the young man in front of him, at least he doesn't speak softly like Luke Burton, nor is he as sharp and sarcastic as Lady Ballet. "Sansa and the girls from Winterfell love you so much, you can stay as long as you want. Yesterday I saw you with John, Rob, and Sean. Sean and Rob are both great guys." Dominic Burton looked at Rob in the distance, "Sean and Jon Snow. Lord Ed, your house is really lively. I've always longed for a brother to accompany me, but unfortunately I didn't. I worked as a servant for Count Holden Redford in the valley for 3 years, and he also has several sons. Lord Ed, you also have several brothers and sisters. My aunt, Mrs. Ballet, often talks about your brother Brandon Stark. I had the honor to talk with your brother, the legendary night watchman, you cavalry Bunyan yesterday. He even invited me to the Black Castle." Madame Ballet walked over, and this time she changed into a long white dress as early as snow, which made Ed even more suspicious that she was intentionally wearing a black dress to Rickon's birthday party yesterday. Ballet exaggeratedly bowed to Ed and turned to Dominic. "Dominic, what are you doing here? Have you forgotten about the martial arts competition? Sir Roderick Casso, the head coach of Wintertown, publicly mocked you at yesterday's banquet for only playing and singing. Dominic, show them your hands." Dominic was a bit confused. "Who will we compete with?" Madame Ballet pointed to John, Sean, and Robert in the distance. "That's these 3. Dominic frowned and said, "Auntie, Robert and John are both children. I am already an adult. I am 15 years old. What is the honor of bullying children?" Rob and John heard this and immediately surrounded them. Rob pulled out his wooden sword and said, "Dominic, I often defeat opponents who are older than me. You call me a child, but I think you're the one who's scared." Jon Snow placed his hands on his chest and said, "I once defeated the Winter City giant Adu on the school field, he's much better than you." Dominic smiled and said, "Children always think they have unlimited strength and are invincible in battle. It seems that I have to teach you a lesson from the end." In order to be fair, you can play together, I can play 1 against 2, and it doesn't matter if you add Sean. Sheehan sneered and said, I don't participate in children's games. I can defeat you 1. On point 1. The attendants of Winterfell City, Wasteland Ton, and Bygang began to shout loudly. Robb, Jon Snow, and Sean crowded out of the hall with Dominic and walked towards the schoolyard. Ed was about to leave when the widow Ballet in the wasteland stopped him. Lord Ed, go take a look. Ed looked disgusted. Madam Ballet, I'm very busy. I'm not interested in children fighting, right? To be precise, I'm not interested in any martial arts competition. Not to mention that children compete on the school field, even if it's the killer versus the fearless Barristan, or the Dawn Sword crawling out of the grave against the Dragon Knight demon, I'm not interested. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Shining Martial Arts Arena. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Shining Martial Arts Arena. Originally, Lady Ballet Dustin's face was full of smiles, but when she heard the name Dawn Sword Arthur Dane, her smile immediately disappeared like summer snow. Why did you mention that Dawn Sword? Why? Lord Ed, do you insist on sprinkling salt on my wound? Ballet's voice grew louder, and Big John Amber, Earl Roderick Leswell, Earl Severn, and Weeman Mandler, who were originally chatting at the other end of the hall, immediately approached. Ed helplessly said, Mrs. Ballet, I'm just using Dawn Sword as an example. In fact, Ed mentioned the regicide James, the fearless Barristan Selmy, and the Dragon Knight Prince Aemon in his speech. These were all the winning generals in the martial arts competition. Who knew that Lady Ballet only grabbed the name of Dawn Sword Arthur Dane? In the Battle of the Tower of Bliss, the legendary Dawn Sword Arthur Dane fell. In this classic battle sung by countless singers, the husband of Ballet, the former Earl of Wasteland, William Dustin, also died. Ed didn't expect that after so many years, the name Dawn Sword could still uncover the scars in Ballet's heart. Arthur Dane killed my husband, Ballet complained. Ed was one of the only survivors of the Battle of the Blissful Tower that year, and he understood the process of the battle. At that time, Arthur Dane alone killed Ed's 3 companions, but not William Dustin. Ed remembered that William Dustin was killed by Oswell Hean in the battle. Ballet seems to believe that Arthur Dane killed her husband. Is it just because of the fame of the Dawn Sword? Back then, Prince Regal placed Ed's sister Lyanna in Dorne's Bliss Tower and arranged for the legendary Imperial Guard, White Bull, Gerald Haytail, Dawn Sword Arthur Dane, and Oswell Hean to guard her. Ed, in order to save his sister, fought with Earl William Dustin, Ethan Glover from Deep Forest, Mark Leswell from the Creek, Mountain Clan warriors Theo Walter, Martin Casso, and Holland Reed from Zealand against the 3 Iron Guards of the Forest. Except for Ed and Holland Reed who survived, everyone else died in battle. Joan Amber, Count Severn, Herman Tauha, Weeman Mandler and others watched from the side, while Lady Ballet's father, Count Leswell, looked worried. Barbara, the widow of Arazuka Tun, was immediately overwhelmed with sadness as she remembered her brief honeymoon with her husband William Dustin. Lord Ed, my husband died to save your sister, but you let him and the bones of other warriors rest on Dorne's land. Is this really appropriate? Ed patiently explained, Holland Reed and I tried to find Silent Sisters and bring your husband and other warriors' bones back to our hometown. However, the war was full of bones, and Silent Sisters could not find them. I could do nothing but bury my warriors with stones. Ed brought his husband's red steed back to Lady Ballet, but was unable to bring back the body. Mrs. Ballet sneered, Lord Ed was powerless, but he brought back the bones of Lyanna. Ed caressed his heart and said, William Dustin, like other warriors who died in the Battle of Winterfell, will always live in my heart. Ballet's eyes flickered with sadness. Lord Ed, I am very grateful for your words. However, I cannot understand why you left the remains of the warrior in your heart in the unfamiliar land of Dorne. My husband was born in the wasteland and grew up under the gaze of the ancestor king. The most important thing for the people of the wasteland is to settle down. Back then, I immediately sent someone south to Dorne to search for my husband's grave, but found nothing. Your warrior disappeared into a foreign land, and the unfamiliar gods only cared for the earth. Lord Ed, if it were your brother Brandon leading the team, he wouldn't have abandoned his comrades who died in battle like you did. Enough. Count Leswell rushed over and grabbed his daughter Ballet's wrist. Are you crazy? You dare to disturb Lord Ed with old memories. Ballet squeezed out a smile and said, I just wanted to invite Lord Ed to see Dominic's performance on the arena. Lord Ed mentioned that Dawn's sword and I talked a few more words. That's all. Mrs. Ballet looked at Ed with a sincere expression and said, Lord Ed, please make sure to see Dominic's horsemanship and swordsmanship. He rides like your brother Brandon. Dominic has always been my pride. Everyone watched as Lady Ballet spun away, and Count Leswell looked apologetic. Lord Ed, please forgive me. Since her husband's death, Ballet has been submerged in sadness. She lives in the hall under the tomb of the Ancestor King. Some people say that the Ancestor King will slowly suck away people's vitality, making living people become like corpses. Look at the way Ballet looks, I have a bit of faith in this curse. Dejun Amber said in a rough voice, women who are always widowed will become like this. Ballet should find a man to hurt her hard in bed. Love can nourish her. At her age, if she's not born, she won't have a chance. Arazuka Tun is the third largest population gathering place in the northern region, second only to Baigang in Dodong town. As a widow of Arazuka Tun, Ballet's dowry can be considered generous. By marrying Ballet, she can rule Arazuka Tun with her. Therefore, after losing her husband, countless suitors flocked to her. This includes the two uncles of John Amber, the prostitute nightmare Amber and the crow eater Amber, Ward Frye of Twin Rivers, Count Gerbert Glover of Deep Forest, Weeman Mandler of White Harbor, as well as many nobles in the Bay and Storm areas. However, these people were all neglected in the wasteland village, and over time no one came to propose marriage to Ballet. Madame Ballet is about the same age as Caitlin, and now Caitlin has her fifth child, which is abundant and productive. However, Ballet has no children. Ed suddenly realized that Ballet treated Dominic as her own son and wanted to prove that her child was no worse than the children in Winterfell, which was why she strongly invited him to watch the martial arts competition. When Ed appeared on the school field with John Amber, Weeman Manderer, Herman Tauha, Count Severn, and others, Lady Ballet immediately burst into a smile. Ruth Bolton's expression was solemn, and he whispered a few words to Ballet, causing Ballet to burst into laughter. Rob and Dominic Burton have put on their leather armor for the competition, holding their blunt swords and standing in the center of the school field. This is not a formal competition, but the showdown between the inheritors of Winterfell and Terror Castle still attracted many nobles, attendants, and servants to watch, and the school field was crowded with people. Sansa, Alia, Jenny Poole, and others were squeezed into the crowd. Dominic Botten is several years older than Robert. Although Robert often defeats opponents who are older than him, he has no chance in front of Dominic and his long sword is quickly shaken away. It's just a child fighting, Big John Amber commented lightly. Jon Snow, the illegitimate son of Winter City, performed slightly better than Robert, but was still easily defeated by Dominic Bolton. Ed's adopted son, Sean, is about the same age as Dominic Burton. The coaches, servants, and soldiers of Wintertown all hope that Sean can win. Before the game began, Sean wore a confident smile on his face. But I didn't expect Sean to be quickly caught by Dominic's loophole, and Sean's wrist was hit, directly disarmed by Dominic. Watching his three apprentices being defeated by the heirs of the Terror Castle, Wintertown coach Roderick Casso reluctantly grabbed his snow-white beard and complained to Robert, Sean, and John. In front of nobles from all over the northern region, you can lose, but you can't lose so badly. Mrs. Ballet shouted to Sir Roderick, old man, is this your apprentice who can hold your hand the most? This clearly angered the head coach of Lindong City, who waved at Halwyn and said, "Halwyn, you go." Halwyn is the son of Huluan, the head of the stables in Lindong City. He is a skilled guard in Lindong City, but Halwyn did not hold on much longer than Robert in front of Dominic. It was only then that people realized that Dominic intentionally let go of water when facing Jon Snow and Robert, the two children. The swordsmanship competition in the morning ended in a disastrous defeat in Winterfell. In the afternoon, there was a long spear competition. During lunch, Sir Roderick Casso kept complaining about Sean, Robert, and Jon's poor performance, especially Halwyn, which made him lose face. "I can consider having Jory Casso participate in the afternoon long spear competition. I must win once," the old coach calculated. Jory Casso was the captain of the Winterfell Guard, who had participated in the suppression of the Greyjoy rebellion and was skilled in horsemanship. John Amber Jr., Sir Herman Tauha, and a group of knights from White Harbor also clamored to challenge Dominic. Madame Ballet brought a red steed, and Dominic changed into armor. The armor was the crimson of the Terror Castle, and the helmet was made in the style of the Leswell family's horse head. His shield was engraved with the rusty crown pattern of his Aunt Dustin's family. The coach of Lindong City longed for revenge, but the long spear competition became Dominic's personal show. Dominic, like a centaur, defeated the guards of Lindong City, Aaron and Haihua, one by one. John Amber Jr., Sir Herman Tauha, and Robert Glover were also defeated in front of Dominic. Every time Dominic wins, Lady Ballet emits wild wolf-like laughter, and Sansa and the maids applaud. Luke Botton's expression became increasingly solemn, with a worried expression. The horse stable manager Huluan said, "This child has excellent riding skills. He's like a centaur when people and horses come together. Last time I saw someone with such good riding skills, it was Miss Lyanna." In the end, Joey Casso personally stepped down and defeated Dominic. However, after multiple rounds of competition, Dominic's physical fitness significantly declined, and many people said that Joey's victory was not impressive. Mrs. Ballet brought Dominic to Ed and proudly said in front of a group of nobles, "Lord Ed, isn't Dominic better than your child? Whether it's your heir, illegitimate child, or adopted child, nobles from all over the north are no match for him." Ed smiled and said, "Yeah, Dominic is so excellent. He's good at music, proficient in history, and has such good martial arts skills. It's really hard for Lady Ballet to cultivate such excellent young people for the north. I've decided to take Dominic as my adopted son." Mrs. Ballet was shocked and said, "What?" Luke Botton, standing beside him, cursed softly and walked away. End of this chapter.